Our number 22 favorite bestest Zelda song of all time, like number 23, had 3 votes. A couple of decently high ones, but everything down here in the bottom part of the top 25, much like the ranking in the top 25 itself, the way the points are distributed, was kind of a mishmash. We talked in the Final Fantasy list about how there was like tiers, right? You know, we had like a platinum tier, as Shaun likes to call it, and like we stepped up a couple times. It's going to be a little while before we step up. I'm not saying that the ones at the bottom of the list aren't worthy. There's just not a lot of separation down here.
We should talk about that really quick, right? Because we thought going into this that the potential for a huge disparity of votes, because there's so much music that's like a similar sort of level, that the votes could be spread out so much. So that's kind of a unique flavor of this list. I think it's gonna be really interesting to see how it plays out.
Mm-hmm. I feel it's gonna be a bit of a mix up at the top, like that really S tier type of thing.
Yeah, really top heavy. Yeah.
Yeah.
We had 4 unanimous votes.
Nice.
We had none in Final Fantasy. No, we had 1 in Final Fantasy. It was our number 1.
And with less people.
Yeah, with less people. Here, we managed, even with 6 of us, to have 4 and another 2 that got 5 votes. So I think you're right. There was a threat for the bottom being more sporadic because there was a lot more tracks to choose from. And I had a lot of, like, you know, my 22 to 40 range was pretty open. Like, any of those could have made it. It reflected in the group list. The top, however, do you want to talk about jumping up a step? So we're still at number 22, however. This was one that got 3 votes, as mentioned. It's interesting because, like you mentioned, some of these motifs kind of echo throughout the series. So we all voted for the original, but there's other tracks that would have gotten credit for this, and that track is Hyrule Castle from Link to the Past. Mm-hmm. Now, this is also Farewell Hyrule King from Wind Waker and a bunch of other tracks throughout the series, but it started here, and to be honest, even though I think the piano version is pretty, this is still my favorite. I'm the one who voted for it the highest, because, I don't know, there's just something about it that's always resonated with me, and you can see that the Zelda creators like it as well, because it keeps showing up.
I had this I had this super high. I think it's especially when you go into this game, you're like such a little kid. Like you like, here, take the sword, I'm dying, and then you go into you're through the castle and you don't know what's going on. All the guards are attacking you. It's just, I don't know. There's something that it's like you hit the ground running so hard in this game.
And there's something about the music that I think isolated even from the game, it feels like there's like tension in it, and like makes you like nervous, like there's a lot going on. And then when you overlay that into Dave, what you were just saying, you're in this castle, you got the sword, you're like, what's going on? Really like builds on itself and makes it like a very great moment.
I think what's cool to me is, again, like it keeps popping up, but like you said, there's this air of mystery to it, but it also has these more like triumphant sounding horns. And even when you're just this kid who has a sword and a weird girl talking to you via telepathy, you're like, all right, I'm going to do the best I can. I don't know. I'm going to kind of venture into this. I'm a little bit scared. My uncle might be dying. It's not clear. And then, like, it just sets the stage for everything that follows. I mean, you can argue that even some of the other opening tracks are good, but, like, before you step into this, it's just rain. And that's all you're hearing at the start of this game is you step out of your house, you don't know what's going on, you get these messages, and then when you fall in this hole and start this is the track that greets you. And I think that's super cool.
And it sounds like it's again, like the royal court. Like you said, it's like trumpets and whatever. It's like it fits a castle theme very well.
But the whole intro adds to the sense of unease, which makes, I think, this song even better. What Chris was just saying about the rain. Yeah. Again, this is the first one on Super Nintendo. This is the change from the 8-bit, the tones, essentially, what the 8-bit had versus this being more full music. And all of a sudden, now you're going through here, you're hearing nothing but rain. You're like, man, was this really what I got when I stepped up to the Super Nintendo? Then you fall in the pit, hear this, you're like, oh, there it is. There it is.
Yeah, and shout-outs to Wind Waker. I mentioned Farewell Hyrule King, but also this version that you have as you're going up to fight Ganon is kind of neat because it's one of those that builds. So in the very beginning, you just kind of get that one lonely instrument, and then eventually you get that like heavy bass as you start getting closer to Ganon. It's not going to be the only example of a track that builds upon itself, but there is a version of this that does that. I still prefer the Link to the Past one, but nonetheless, it's cool to see its different iterations.
Man, you described my fantasy of I have a sword, a girl, strange girl talking to me telepathically.
This girl you're starting to sound like a psychopath, man.
Call the authorities.
It's like my dreams come true.
He's assaulting the police officers, and all for this person that's in his head.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember our D&D campaign, but that's very much the archetype that Shaun likes.
Ah.